morning, my name is Storm and today I'm going to critique an assessment that was completed with one of my residents. The assessment is the Canadian Occupational Performance Measure. So before we chose to do this assessment, we were introduced to our resident. We spent some time getting to know her. We completed an initial interview and did quite a lot of information gathering. This lady is Italian and she comes from a huge Italian family and has quite a big family herself. So I anticipated that being a mother and a grandmother would be two of her most significant occupational roles, and that a lot of her past occupations would be based around taking care of her family. I expected that we wouldn't have any problems identifying current occupations that were meaningful to her, and we would be able to create some goals that would increase her engagement in occupations within the residential aged care facility. It turns out we actually struggled to get her to identify current occupations that she participates in, or that she would like to continue participating in, or to start participating in. So that's when my student partner and I decided that we would complete the COPM. And I was hoping that by completing this assessment based solely on meaningful occupations, performance in those occupations, and how satisfied she was with her performance, that by doing this, that would assist us to identify some goals that we could work towards with her. So in the session that we met her and we completed the COPM, I explained the reason for the session and how we're going to use the COPM to set some goals with her. Both my student partner and I administered the COPM, but in the end, we were the ones suggesting occupations, and I was the one suggesting a number between 1 and 10 based on the information that she was giving us to score her, how she felt her performance was and her satisfaction in that performance. She wasn't giving us a number. She would just kind of, if I said, oh, so is that around a 6 or a 7, she would just agree and go, oh yeah, that sounds right. The experience of administering the COPM with this particular resident was a little frustrating. I don't even know where to begin to explain what it was like, or what actually happened. She just, I felt like we explained the purpose of the COPM really well, and she understood, but when it came down to gathering a list of meaningful occupations that she was having difficulty with, it was quite a challenge. And it was just like, she was participating in the COPM, but it was more like she was just doing it just to keep us happy, and she was just agreeing with whatever we were saying. So she wasn't actually coming up with things on her own. This resident does experience depression, and she had mentioned several times that she felt like she'd had a cold that had stuck with her for the last few months. So she hadn't been feeling the best. Maybe this was impacting on her memory or her ability to concentrate on what we were saying to her. I'm not quite sure. The things that didn't work with this, I've been doing the OT course part-time now for a number of years, so it's been a while since I'd had the opportunity, since I practiced with the COPM. I went into the session unprepared, really unfamiliar with the COPM also, and how I knew how to administer the COPM, but facilitating a productive conversation around occupations with a resident in an aged care facility I wasn't familiar with, so I really struggled with that. So before starting the session with the resident, I should have practiced administering the COPM with my student partner, or at the very least had a conversation about our plans and how we thought that the whole session would run. I could have even thought of a few prompting questions that I could ask her to encourage the resident to think about her most significant occupations, past and current and maybe future, because from the information that we gathered previously, I knew that it was going to be a bit of a struggle to get her to identify occupations. During this time we were administering the assessment, both my student partner and I questioned the resident on her occupations, and both of us tried to explain the purpose throughout the session as well. So looking back after that experience, perhaps beforehand we should have nominated just one person to administer the COPM, because it might have created a little bit confusion with both my student partner and I talking and asking questions, and maybe that's why she was having difficulty coming up with a response for us. And also, if we had have practiced beforehand, we would have been more confident, we would have looked like we'd known what we were doing, and she probably would have had a bit more confidence in us as well. I felt that the COPM was an appropriate assessment to do with this particular client, because she did have the capacity to identify meaningful occupations. She had an awareness of what she was capable of doing and what things that she couldn't do, but she did need some assistance prioritising the occupations she was having difficulty with, so we could choose something that we could work on together with her and set the goals around. I learnt from this experience that when choosing to administer an assessment with a client, you really need to consider who the person is. Are they going to be able to understand the purpose of the assessment, and how are they going to participate in the assessment also. In this particular experience, the resident, she was quite happy with her level of engagement in occupations. Even though she would have liked to increase her level of participation, at this point in time she wasn't feeling the best. So I think that's also why it was difficult for her to score her performance and satisfaction as well, because before, when she was feeling well, she was happy, she was engaging in her occupations, and she hadn't been engaging so much because she hadn't been feeling well, so it was difficult for her to score that. I learnt that there's great value in being prepared for myself and for my client, and I recognise that even though I may think that I'm familiar with an assessment, I still need to take the time to practice administering the assessment, and just having a general discussion or a plan in my head as well for the session, how the session's going to run with my colleagues before jumping in there and just thinking that I know everything and I don't need to prepare. So I really need to do that as well. Thank you.